The 2023 free agent class doesn't have as many star-studded names as previous years. We obviously know about Kyrie and James Harden, but besides those guys, this is still a sneakily deep free agent class. This offseason's already been insane, and I imagine free agency's only going to make it crazier. Let's talk about the top free agents and some of the landing spots I can see them making a big impact in. I should note that I'm only including one restricted free agent on my list, as decent restricted free agents rarely switch teams, but there's one interesting case here that I guarantee you guys are already aware of. Let's start out with the obvious Tier 1 superstar level players. In my opinion, the number one guy in this year's free agency is Kyrie Irving. He had a tumultuous season to say the least, and despite his inability to stay out of the headlines, he still had a great and efficient season. Unfortunately, it didn't translate into success for the Mavericks. They had an 8-12 record when he played, and a 4-8 record when he played with Luka. I wholeheartedly believe on the court he wasn't the problem in Dallas. Luka and Kyrie are just a bit of a weird fit, but the Mavs knew that. Reports have come out that a 4-year max contract with Dallas is not a done deal with Kyrie, but I think they're going to find a way to come to an agreement. There just aren't many playoff-level teams that have the ability to acquire him. There's always going to be the noise of the Lakers rumors, but I just don't believe that. The Mavericks cannot afford to lose him, and I don't think they will. The number 2 guy is James Harden. I wouldn't be mad if you put him at 1, but his inconsistency is just really starting to annoy me. As usual, he missed some games throughout the season, but he had a really strong season overall. In 58 games, Harden averaged 21 points per game and 10.7 assists per game. He can still have explosive outings, like his 2 40-point performances against the Celtics in the playoffs, but just look at those averages in the other 5 games of that series. Ew. I'm writing this script, Harden actually accepted his player option in a move that few people expected. This move all but guarantees James Harden has played his last game as a 76er. The 2 teams I've seen the most active in trade talks are the Clippers and the Knicks. Both teams can match the contracts, but I think that this move makes more sense for the LA Clippers. After these 2 superstars, there is a significant drop-off in this year's free agency class, but there's still a lot of productive players in this second tier. Honorable mentions go out to Kristaps Porzingis and Chris Paul, who are going to be in this tier until they were traded to new teams and taken off the market. Thank you for making me waste my dang time writing about them in this script. Let's start out with Jeremy Grant. He's transformed his career from a role player with the 76ers and Thunder, then showed some star-level flashes in his season with the Nuggets. He then turned down an extension with this year's champions to take a payday from the Pistons to be the guy. That generally had poor results. He scored a lot, but they sucked. This year on the Blazers, though, as a second or third option, he was able to put up 20 points per game with very solid defense on great efficiency, showing he does have an ability to be a volume scorer. As I mentioned already, there's not too many teams with cap space this offseason, and those with cap space are teams that are generally not competing. Whether the Trailblazers are competing is a question for another video, but it seems like Damian Lillard is staying with the Blazers, and so, I think Grant will stay too. The Blazers don't have the money to sign someone else without bird rights, so it's him or nothing. He's probably going to get like 4 years, $100 million from him. This tier also includes cash money Chris Middleton. Coming off a knee injury at the beginning of the season, he came off the bench for the first time since 2015. His overall averages were not inspiring, shooting his worst ever percentage from the field and his second worst percentage from 3 in his career. However, he began returning to his usual self after the All-Star break. But the elephant in the room is the Bucks' shocking first-round exit to the 8th-seeded Miami Heat. And yes, they made the finals. Yes, Giannis was injured for the bulk of 3 games, but this was still an upset. Middleton played pretty well in the series, but they went out sad. Losing Middleton would be catastrophic for the Bucks. I think the Kings, Rockets, or Thunder would be interested in his services, but my guess is he stays in Milwaukee with a longer-term contract. Another ex-All-Star in this free agency class is Fred VanVleet. After a strong 2018 playoffs, VanVleet emerged into a borderline All-Star caliber player, even making the All-Star team in 2022. Last season he put up solid counting stats, but on efficiency that leaves a lot to be desired. Toronto majorly underperformed their expectations this year, and it's clear this Toronto team without Kawhi is just a pretender, not a contender. VanVleet is a small guard, which gives me some worries, and NBA teams are starting to realize inefficient volume scorers are not super impactful towards winning. VanVleet has said his whole NBA life is in Toronto, but he would have some suitors on the open market. Specifically, I think Utah could be a good landing spot for him. Utah has so many extra draft picks that they don't even need to tank themselves. A less talked about option, but my favorite one actually, is a sign and trade to the LA Clippers. They badly need a starting guard, and they have the salaries to trade in Batum and Covington. Finally, I've also seen rumors of Houston offering a $40 million AAV contract, but that would be very dumb in my opinion. If Toronto re-signs him, they will sign their souls away to mediocrity for years to come. Probably the third biggest name in this year's free agent class is Draymond Green. Draymond Green's a future Hall of Famer who has won 4 championships with his extremely unique play style over 11 years with the Warriors. He's always been extremely polarizing though, whether it be kicking opponents in the nuts or punching his own teammate in the face. Lucky for him, Jordan Poole is off the team now. However, there are many other factors forcing him out of Golden State. To re-sign him, the Warriors would have to pay huge luxury tax fees and repeater luxury tax fees. Draymond Green declined his $27.5 million player option, stating the writing is on the wall with Golden State. I think that he will return to the Warriors if they give him the money, but if they don't, I would say a sign-and trade to the Mavericks or to the Lakers so he can team up with his man-crush LeBron are the next most likely options. Now we have a player who made a big leap up to the second tier in the second half of last season, Austin Reeves. He's the only restricted free agent I have listed here because it's not guaranteed he resigns with the Lakers. Of course the Lakers want to resign him, but can they justify the cost? Austin Reeves has come seemingly out of nowhere this year to be an integral piece for the Lakers. In 23 games after the All-Star game, he averaged almost 17.5 points and 5.5 assists per game on 58-44 splits. He was not only making shots, but being more aggressive and getting shots off. And in the playoffs, this guy was a legit third star for them. This white boy has that dog in him. He averaged more than 20 points and 5 assists per game in the conference finals against Denver. The Lakers can only offer a max of 4 years, $51 million, but they can hypothetically match any offer to my understanding. But teams will offer $90 to $100 million contracts to him probably, and this would make their luxury bill so dang high. Reeves said himself, this is definitely somewhere I want to be, but we'll see what happens. So, by his words, I guess we'll see what happens. Next up in this tier is a consistent, steady veteran in BROOK LOPEZ. Honestly, I'm going to keep this one extremely short. He's getting quite up there in age and is probably looking at a last contract here. The fit's been great in Milwaukee as a defensive anchor and floor spacer, and I don't think he would leave despite the Houston Rockets rumors, so I'm saying that he comes back to the Milwaukee Bucks. The last player in Tier 2 is a 20-point-per-game scorer that snuck under the radar, KUZMA. Stuck in Washington last year, you probably didn't hear too much about him, but he was getting buckets. Not super efficient buckets, but buckets nonetheless. He averaged over 21 points per game on slightly below league average efficiency. I won't say he was putting up empty stats, but it's clear that his role in the NBA is not a number one scoring option. Still, sometimes he catches fire and can drop points in a flurry. KUZMA's declined his $13 million player option and is expecting much more than that in free agency. With Beal and KP gone, the odds of him returning to the Wizards is about the same as the chance the Wizards win the finals next year. I assume that Utah and Indiana would be interested in his services, but my official guess is that he signs with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think that he would provide a nice scoring punch to this young Thunder team that's looking to qualify for the playoffs for the first time. The guys in this third tier are not all-star caliber players, or they particularly stuff the stat sheet, but every team in the NBA needs some of these Tier 3 players to win a championship. First, I'll mention someone who I grew to love in his half a season as a Knick, Josh Hart. I can't say enough about Josh Hart. He's the perfect role player for any contending team. He rebounds, he attacks the paint, he makes the right pass, he plays hard-nosed defense, and pun intended, he plays with heart. I cannot think of anyone more suited for Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks scheme. Again, as I'm writing this script, Josh Hart has also accepted his player option, and will likely work on an extension to stay with Jalen Brunson in the Knicks long term. I really should not have done so much work on this video the day that the player option deadlines were. Then let me talk about slightly better Josh Hart, Bruce Brown Jr. Originally, I was not even going to talk about him because I thought surely he was going to re-sign with the Nuggets. However, I'm seeing more and more rumors on the contrary. Like I said, every team needs some of those Tier 3 players to win a championship, and Bruce Brown is the perfect embodiment of that. I think the Nuggets will try very hard to re-sign him, but I'm seeing significant rumors of him going to the Knicks or Timberwolves. Even after the Naz Reid extension, the Timberwolves are just under the luxury tax and hence can use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception of about $12 million. Hence, I think he's going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Next man up, I have D-Loading. D'Angelo Russell's had a weird last couple of years. Fans were very excited for the Cat and D'Lo pairing, especially because of their widely known friendship. He had some decent years on the Timberwolves, but it seemed like every year, opinions on him kept getting sourer and sourer. After getting traded back to the Lakers this year, he once again had some good moments and some bad moments. In the first round, he had a great 31-point performance in the clinching Game 6. However, he was bad in the second round, and downright atrocious in the conference finals. In their 4-game sweep, he averaged just 6 points and 3.5 assists per game on 32% shooting, getting benched in favor of Dennis Schroeder as the series went on. Reports have come out that the Lakers don't want to offer him a max, but he would still love to return. Honestly, I think the Spurs should pursue him to get Wemby a capable point guard to play with, but since I don't think the Lakers are getting Kyrie, and they're obviously not getting Chris Paul, I think they're going to keep D'Lo under contract for another guard in their rotation. The next player in this tier is Jakob Poeltl. He's not the flashiest player, but he's a great player to have on your team. He helps anchor your defense, and for the Toronto Raptors, it allows Siakam to go back to his natural position, the power forward. I think that a team like the Dallas Mavericks could really use Jakob Poeltl, but I think that Jakob Poeltl likes being in Toronto and will stay put there. Getting close to the end here, the next player I want to mention is Jordan Clarkson. He hit a career high in points per game, being a full-time starter for the first time since 2016. His efficiency was slightly below average relative to the league, and he had uncharacteristic turnover problems last season due to his extremely high usage rate. I personally think Clarkson is best as a top-quality sixth man. I'm making this video before Jordan Clarkson's official decision on his player option, but I think it's practically guaranteed he declines it. But will he leave the Utah Jazz? And does he want to be a starter? He could not agree on a contract extension with the Jazz, so I think him leaving is a real possibility. I think the teams that would benefit the most from his services would be the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Chicago Bulls if they can afford him. The Cavaliers show that they need some consistent bench scoring in the playoffs, and the Bulls need a guard that can fill in the minutes lost by Lonzo Ball. Second to last, I want to mention Gabe Vincent. What a story he is, to be honest. He was really a stud for the Miami Heat in their finals run. He plays super well in the pick and roll, has a knack for scoring, and really embodies Heat culture. In the playoffs, he had several games where he dropped 20-plus points. I didn't even have him on this list until the conference finals, but boy does he deserve this spot. However, there are going to be many teams looking to obtain his services. I think a 76ers team without James Harden would be the front-runner to sign him, unless he'll probably return to the Heat. The last player in Tier 3 is Russell Westbrook, an extremely interesting case. He was made to be the scapegoat for all the Lakers' problems last season, and to be fair, they played better after he left. But he also played quite well for the Clippers. Russell Westbrook almost took a game from the Suns single-handedly in the playoffs. I think Russell Westbrook enjoyed being valued by the Clippers, and will take a pay cut to return to them next season. There are obviously tons of free agents that I didn't mention that are going to be in NBA rotations next year, but I just don't have an hour for this video. For a few examples, Gary Trent Jr. is an 18-point-per-game scorer who's probably going to move on from the Raptors. Christian Wood is a good scoring big man that will likely move on from Dallas. And Mason Plumlee is a good backup center who will probably stay on the Clippers. With all that being said, let me know what you think. Do you think I found some good landing spots for these impending free agents? We will know more in a few days so we can see how I did. But for now, thanks for watching, and until the next video, peace out.